Is that yourself?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Now. My fault,
fine.
sorry.
No worries. And then in terms of the draft Nelson Master Plan, I've got County Councillor Azhar Ali.
I'm on.
Okay, thank you. Then I've got William Stevenson.
Here.
Thank you very much. And Janine Snowden.
Yeah, here.
Okay, thank you very much for that, ladies and gentlemen. Before I open the meeting, can I take this opportunity to welcome our newly appointed Chief Finance Officer, Fiona Greenway, to the authority. Fiona, you are with us? Yes, you are. Can see you.
I am. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item 1 is declarations of interest. Is there any member of the committee that's got any declaration to declare? No. Okay, item 2 is public question time, and that's received for a maximum of 15 minutes. Questions from members of the public on issues which don't appear on the agenda. And I've had an indication from Ash Sutcliffe to ask a question. Ash, if you want to unmute yourself and ask the question, please.
Sure, thank you, Chair. As the Borough faces up to the challenges of delivering enough houses to meet the government's targets, it is important that we ensure the local plan is fully informed and includes information like a bid made to the government's Levelling Up Fund. A successful bid to the Levelling Up Fund has the power to make things previously unviable viable, and in that sense can protect green spaces and also make brownfield sites become more appealing. Can councillors tell me what position a bid is currently, and when can we expect responses from the government, owing to the fact that as a priority area, Pendle qualifies for a £125,000 grant to facilitate a bid that could be worth millions into the borough?
Okay, thanks for that, Ash. First of all, thank you for your question in terms of the Levelling Up Fund. The Levelling Up Fund was announced by the government as part of the budget, and the prospectus came out a couple of weeks ago. Pendle has been placed in priority 1 along with a significant number of other councils across the country. The total fund is roughly about £4.9 billion. Now, if government were willing to give us their £4.9 billion, then I'd be absolutely over the moon and singing Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson's praises. But we've been given an indication that bids have to be, the first round of bids have to be in by June, which is a very challenging timetable for the council to achieve. But the bids cannot be any higher than £20 million. So whilst £20 million may sound a lot of money, some of the things that the council may wish to do, that may wish to address a significant number of issues around regeneration, potential protection of our housing sites, employment sites, other things, or even reopening the Corn to Skipton rail link, £20 million will not cover any of those projects in their entirety. But I, along with the Chief Executive, who will come in shortly, are working with councillors across the political divide to try and identify which projects we put forward, which are sustainable in the long term, and hopefully which will achieve funding from the government.
Sharon Dale
is now joining.
Okay, which will hopefully come to fruition. But ideally, in an ideal world, I mean, it's a bidding process. What I would like is the government simply to work with the council on behalf of the local people and say, right, okay, what are your priorities? And here's the amount of money to deal with those priorities, which will be important to local people. So that's where we are in terms of Levelling Up Fund. You're right, we will be given some money to help towards a bid, but it's a very ambitious target set by government. Dean, is there anything that you need to add as Chief Exec?
Yes, Chairman, just perhaps 3 things. Firstly, the prospectus was issued as part of the budget, but the actual detailed bidding guidance has yet to be issued. So we're not in a position to understand exactly what is required of us in order to submit a bid by the 18th of June. As Councillor Iqbal has said, it's a challenging timetable, not least because what the government is after is shovel-ready projects that can be delivered in 2021-22. And the likelihood of us doing that, I think, is reasonably remote, if I'm honest. In terms of the funding that's been made available, that isn't available to those bidders who want to go in the first round. It's available to those in subsequent rounds. So there isn't £125,000 available to us. And I think the other thing to perhaps say is that, of course, we're doing this at a time when we're still working on existing bids that we've got to do and delivering existing schemes. So all the capacity that the council has in order to deliver and put together bids is currently taken up, delivering things like the extension to Lomershire, the new housing at Firth of Clough Head, and all those other schemes where we've been successful in getting funding that we're having to deliver now. So it is a challenging timetable. We are a priority place, which is helpful, and we will be developing a bid. But whether we were able to submit it by the 18th of June, I think is looking reasonably remote. That doesn't mean that we won't be doing something. Of course we will. We're a prime candidate for Levelling Up Fund. Again, to reiterate the point, it is £20 million. So whilst people may perceive that to be a significant amount of funding, it does not really go a long way in regeneration terms. So thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thanks for that, Dean, and thanks for the question, Ashley. Okay, moving on to the minutes of the last meeting. If everybody are happy, they're a correct record. Anybody? Thank you, David. Okay, I'm going to slightly deviate from the agenda now to accommodate those people that have asked to speak. So in terms of the planning applications, I mean, I'll deal with the first one in terms of the single-storey rear extension at Manor Street. Hopefully that's now straightforward. Since the Nelson Area Committee approved the application against officer advice, I understand there's been discussions between the applicant's agent and the council, and the recommendation has now changed to approval by the planning officer. So I'm happy to move that from the chair.
Second that.
Okay. Everybody happy? Anybody against? Speak up now. No. Thank you very much for that, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, the next planning application I've got that I've got speakers on is the erection of 2 3-bed dwellings and associated garages on land to the north of Oakfield at Skipton Old Road, Corn. I have a number of speakers. My understanding is, can I just check? Sharon Dale's joined us now. Sharon? Sharon, are you with us?
Me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah, thank you. I was just checking that you were here now.
Hello?
Sharon,
Hello,
can you hear
me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
You can hear me. Yeah, I've been unmuted, so yes,
that's fine. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah.
So just in terms of the application, ladies and gentlemen, I have the applicant and his agent, and then I have 6 people wishing to speak against the application. Now, normally the council's rules are that you allow 5 minutes for each side of the debate. Clearly, 5 into 6 or 5 into 2 means that people won't have much time to speak. So what I will do is I will invite the objectors one by one as they are written on my sheet to speak. What I would please request to people is that if somebody has already made the point previously, that you don't repeat it for the sake of repeating it. But if I feel that some people are starting to overrun, then I may interject and ask you to draw to a conclusion, if that's okay. So the first speaker that I've got is Kelly Hallhouse. Kelly, if you want to unmute yourself and address the committee, please.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you and good evening, everyone. Firstly, I would like to highlight that access to this proposal via the narrow Bents and Bent Lane and the single vehicle width farm track is simply not suitable to support this development. The proposed houses aren't on a public highway, so aside from the new residents' cars, every single parcel, mail, shopping delivery will see delivery vans having to follow this same convoluted and hazardous route. The prospect of construction traffic also potentially using this narrow route would be absolutely ridiculous, highly dangerous and concerning from a safety perspective. LCC Highways initially gave a very strong objection to the use of this access, and we can't understand how this could be diluted when nothing materially has changed within the proposal. I also want to highlight that local residents dispute some of the content of the applicant's highway supporting documents, not least where it references that there's enough space for passing places along the Bents and the access track. In reality, these spaces are either people's private land or driveways, and to pass along the Bents means one car driving onto the pavement. The number of existing properties using the track for vehicle access is also understated in these documents, and it was frustrating that Mr. Watson unknowingly quoted some of these inaccuracies at the recent Colne area meeting, despite these documents being available on the planning portal. And I must also refute the idea that we can rely on comments about traffic made by a planning inspector almost 30 years ago to inform any decision made today, when it's clear to all that traffic is so much worse now. The access track has previously been referred to as a short track. It is actually 90 yards long and already serves 2 properties at its far extremity. So intensified use along this will lead to an increase in vehicles having to reverse back out onto Bent Lane to allow others to exit the track. This is beside a 90-degree blind bend, which is already dangerous, and the hazards increase significantly around pick-up and drop-off times at Christchurch Primary School. and I believe this presents an unacceptable impact and risk to highway safety. The Bent Lane junction by Christchurch onto Keighley Road is difficult, but most dangerous of all, and important to be aware of, is the junction between Bents and Skipton Old Road. Having used this route on an almost daily basis over the last 13 years, I'm only too aware of how frequently cars have to reverse back out onto Skipton Old Road due to the congestion on Bents. It's just so dangerous, especially with the parked cars that line Skipton Old Road in close proximity to this junction. I can quote many examples where I've had to do this repeatedly myself. Indeed, this morning I had to do this 4 times as I was on the school run, which with 2 young children in the back of the car, sometimes in darkness, is a cause for grave concern, especially knowing the speed cars fly up and down Skipton Old Road. Even a very small increase in traffic on this route increases risk dramatically. And I really do fear we're on the cusp of a serious crash at this junction. I hope the councillors will be receptive to these comments and endorse the Colne Area Committee refusal on access grounds. The applicant can then fairly easily mitigate the risk discussed by considering the much safer and more direct alternative access option that already exists here via his own Oakfield driveway. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Kelly. The next speaker I have is Helen Clegg. Helen, if you want to unmute yourself, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make some comments on general access. The main important points are the original LCC Highways report on this application was a strong opposition on all fronts. This opposition has been diluted, although in reality none of the original points on safety have changed. The transport documents submitted by the applicants are full of inaccuracies, are misleading and recommend some unsafe hazardous practices. Bent Lane is single vehicle width at both ends, with a school at one end, a narrow 90-degree bend in the middle, and a junction with no intervisibility with Skipton Old Road at the other end. Vehicles turning into Bents regularly have to reverse back onto Skipton Old Road when meeting oncoming traffic. Bents is effectively single vehicle width due to parked cars, and the residual road is very narrow despite residents parking on the pavement. There are no passing places. The proposed access is via a rough, unlit, unmade, single vehicle width track from Bent Lane. There are no passing places. Cars coming up from Bent Lane have to reverse back towards the blind 90-degree bend if meeting a car coming from Bents or the unmade track. The pinch point between 2 walls on the track is 2.6 metres. The tracks are all designated footpaths, heavily utilised by walkers from the Lidgett Triangle and children going to and from Christchurch School. A pinch point on the track at the entrance to the proposed site makes it impossible for a HGV to enter the site without trespassing on Dobb Reading land. 8 properties already utilise the track to access their homes and/or parking provision. The track network has mixed ownership, and this has not been taken into account by LCC. The 2 proposed properties have no other form of access from the main highway other than the track, so all resident vehicles visiting social, commercial, emergency vehicles, pedestrians and delivery vans would have to access via this route. The information used by the applicant of a planning inspector's report from 1992 is totally irrelevant to be applied to today's situation. Today's level of car ownership, online shopping deliveries and lifestyle changes have increased traffic intensity to a level unimaginable in 1992. Expert opinion is that online shopping is predicted to continue to rise even after COVID restrictions lift. The proposed access in this application is inappropriate and unsuitable for the local infrastructure. I urge that it is refused on the grounds of access.
Thank you very much, Helen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The next speaker I have is Malcolm Rochford.
Yes, good evening. I'd like to speak on construction access. LCC Highways, in their report and various correspondence exchanges with the applicant shown on the planning, have maintained major concerns with regard to construction vehicles utilising Bents Lane and the narrow track. The applicant arranged for 32-ton wagons to repeatedly access the site via the track last summer to deliver and remove material. These manoeuvres gave literally single-digit inches to spare between the oversized trucks, buildings and walls. They also resulted in damage to a metal drain cover. When straying onto private property, a large stone drain cover was smashed. The wagons also destroyed grass verges at the narrowest parts of the track and damaged the field drain. A portion of the track has remained wet ever since. A suggestion by the applicant that building materials could be transferred to a smaller vehicle to access the site via the track would result in a high volume of HGVs, minimum 7.5 tonnes, which would destroy the integrity of the track. The logistics for unloading roof trusses, timber frame panels, hardcore and concrete pour for foundations does not lend itself to access via the track and would cause disruption if accessing the site from the Skipton Old Road sign. Of course, it's not just the HGVs involved in the construction phase, it is the vehicles of the construction workers accessing and parking in the area over a prolonged period. Recently, the heritage stone cattle trough was excavated out and removed from the Lidget Triangle. This work involved one plant vehicle, a trailer, a truck and several additional cars, all accessing the area via the track, just on the one day. The damage inflicted on the track with further destruction of grass verges risks undermining adjacent walls, and it has been clear for all to see. It provides overwhelming evidence that the composition of the track is just not robust enough to withstand any additional traffic intensity. The main soil drains from High Bank Barn, that's 20, 21 and 22 the Bents, run across the track to the main sewer line at the gable of 15 Bents. The track construction, being a crushed stone and soil, would offer little resistance to the repeated heavy forces of construction vehicles, resulting in potential damage to the drains. The question has also been raised by the residents as to whether any firm liability with regard to any damage caused has been documented. The increased activity and heavy vehicles used in the track over the past 12 months have left it in a poor state of repairs, making it difficult to negotiate in a standard car. I urge that this application is refused specifically on grounds of access. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Next, I have Louise Hopkinson. Louise?
Oh, hello.
Yeah.
Hi there.
Can hear you.
Good,
Louise.
good. Okay. I would like to object on traffic impact on Skipton Old Road. I'm a concerned resident of Skipton Old Road, and I live on the opposite side of the road to the proposed plot. From personal experience, I can comment on the traffic hazards already present for the residents, the road users and the pedestrians. In fact, some time ago, I approached our local councillor to request either a 20-mile-an-hour speed zone or a community speed concern signs due to the poor visibility and the speed of some of the traffic coming up and down Skipton Old Road. The residents in this area have drives and parking spaces. However, reversing into the drives is always a hazard, and trying to get out when there's a blind bend 50-ish yards away can be very hard work, as traffic coming up can't be seen until they've come round the bend. We have some very near misses of having our bumper removed when trying to pull out of the drive. Intensification of traffic would only increase the hazards on this section of the road. The development on the Rough is not fully occupied yet, so the traffic situation is set to worsen in due course, school runs and peak travelling times in particular. The potential presence of construction plant vehicles and contractors' vehicles, the offloading of materials, etc., is only going to exacerbate the hazards and problems. I'm still in a state of disbelief of how much clearance and activity has gone on this land without planning permission being granted. We have frequently observed massive trucks and diggers, etc., clearing the site, and with all the accompanying noise. Just today, 2 of the remaining 3 mature trees on the site were felled. Half the carriageway was corned off. Plant vehicles and contractors' vehicles were parked on Skipton Old Road, which was fine while they had the traffic management in place. But once they were on the brake, we were watching large and small vehicles reversing up and down Skipton Knoll Road to get out of the way of each other. As it's on a bend, many vehicles had set off up the hill before being able to see if there was anything coming down the hill. And that was just one day. Never mind the 6 to 12 months it will probably take to develop and complete the proposed build. It doesn't really bode very well. This application must be refused, not only on the inappropriate proposed access using the farm track, but because of the significant adverse impact on road safety. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Louise. Next, I have Mr. William Reynolds.
Hello, Chair. I'm not going to reiterate everything that my colleagues have said. We recently moved into a property which is on the access track at the end of January. The paper that was presented, the traffic management paper, has got inaccuracies. The boundary of our property at the front runs parallel across to the adjoining property. One of the passing spaces could not be a passing space without encroaching onto our property. There is no right of access other than to the properties that the properties that use our land to access garages. So we contend that the passing space, and I can't point to it on the screen, but that falls within our land. The next one down, next blue part. Other direction. Just there, that's correct. That is a single track. If you draw a line across our boundary to the far side of the track, it is 9 feet wide. There is no way 2 vehicles can pass there without encroaching onto our property. There's a second passing space further up the track towards Bents. I understand that also is on private property, but that would need to be confirmed with the owner there. The second point to make is LCC Highways have stipulated a number of conditions in all their documentation. These conditions are also included in the committee report, and that includes a full access traffic management plan for construction. We have seen no evidence on the planning portal that this management plan has been presented. If it hasn't been presented, how can it be passed if they're the conditions? We need to also understand how those conditions will be managed and policed. If there are no sanctions, then those conditions can be simply ignored, which I think would be very detrimental. On a personal note, delivery of materials. Previous speaker has already spoken about the challenges of unloading on Skipton Old Road. Our removal company couldn't gain access to our site, so they parked their large vehicle in the car park of the Morris Dancers pub. It was closed due to COVID restrictions, and moved our property in a series of 6 or 7 smaller vehicle trips. That was okay for a day. I couldn't see that being a sustainable method for the period of 6 months. On those 3 bases, the absence of passing tracks, the LCC highway conditions that have not been met, and the delivery of building materials, this application should be rejected. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reynolds. And then finally, in terms of the objectors, I have Sharon Dale. Sharon, can you hear me?
Yep, I can. Can you hear me?
I can indeed. The floor is yours.
Lovely. Thank you. I'll try to keep this brief. I'm speaking as somebody who lives on that bend where the narrow track, which Mr. Cunningham proposes to use as access for his housing development, converges with 3 narrow roads. So basically, I've got a bird's eye view of it. I see what goes on every day. And I'm very worried about the intensification of traffic if this development goes ahead. So those roads are of the track, Bents, which is the row of cottages leading to Skipton Old Road, Bent Lane, and the private road that runs down the side of my house. So it's one track, 3 narrow roads, and a 90-degree blind bend in the middle. The dry stone wall surrounding my house has been damaged a number of times by wagons and delivery vehicles, because this is a pinch point where vehicles meet unexpectedly because they can't see around the bends, and then it's chaos. We all have our hearts in our mouths while they try and reverse and manoeuvre. This happens actually multiple times a day, and I look out on it because I work from the front room. So, there are regular heart-stopping moments and quite a lot of swearing. It's worse in the morning at lunchtime and at 3 o'clock when there's a lot of school traffic and a lot of children walking home. My 80-year-old neighbour, Cass Stead, who lives opposite me, also on the bend, has asked me to convey her concerns. She's experienced many issues with wagons and delivery vehicles as they negotiate that corner. And it's so bad that the Highways Department have erected 2 bollards at the side of a house to try and help the situation. But she's still very worried that, one day a wagon might take a wall out. I'd just like to make the point that blind bend is really busy throughout the day. It's busy at all times because Bent Lane is used as a rat run to access Keighley Road. And it's even more busy when the school traffic arrives. Given that this build will take at least a year with groundwork, construction and fit out, I am very worried about the damage, that could be caused to my house, my neighbour's house. And there's obviously worries about the safety of pedestrians. Parking's going to be an issue, that's already been mentioned. So I would just urge that this application is refused on grounds of access. If it isn't, then the obvious solution to everybody's problems is that the access is from Mr. Cunningham's own drive, and that's what the Highways Department highlighted as the best option. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, I make that just over 17 minutes in terms of people that wish to object. So Mr. Cunningham and Mr. Ramsden, I don't know which one of you wants to go first, but you don't have to match the 17 minutes if you don't want to. But if I'm going to give you a fair crack of the whip, and if I feel that between you both you're getting up to that time, I'll then ask you to wrap up. So who wants to go first, Mr. Cunningham or Mr. Ramsden?
Peter?
Is that Mr. Cunningham?
Oh.
Yeah, Mr. Cunningham, can you hear me?
Chair, I can't hear you now. I think I was muted
Okay.
earlier. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I've listened very carefully and I respect the way that the Chair, can you hear me? Because my screen... Right, okay.
I can hear you perfect.
My screen's flickering about a bit. I respect the comments made by the objectors, but I want to draw the committee's attention to the Highways Development Support Engineer from Lancashire County Council. And this development that we've put together is something that's taken 2 years to do. We've been in direct contact with the Pendlebury Council and with the Highways engineers as a matter of safety and also efficiency. Kelly Holt wrote on Wednesday, the 27th of January, 2021 to all of the objectors, and this letter is also placed on the Pendlebury Council site for everyone to see. She wrote an extensive response from the Lancashire County Council Highways, who are the highways authority in our particular area, and she said that she'd visited the site on many occasions and that trained and qualified engineers had been involved in the responses. She said that passing places were there and are present on the track, and she confirmed this with site visits. She also had legal representation from our solicitors, and which is in direct contrast to some of the objectors' comments this evening, and that we have legally secured rights, and these have been reviewed by the Highways Authority, Lancashire County Council. The rights of way is not viewed as a concern by Lancashire County Council. In fact, the low speeds on the track and the good visibility means that the arrangements are, in the words of Kelly Holt and Lancashire County Council, perfectly adequate. Bent's narrow road widths, even so, there have been no accidents at either junction of the road over the past 5 years, which is their measuring, their measure of effectiveness, and there's no evidence to suggest that additional traffic will be generated by 2 new dwellings, and this will not change how the road is used or change how she describes it as having an exemplary safety record. In planning terms, she says that planning should only be prevented or refused on highway grounds if there's an unacceptable impact on the highway safety. And she quotes paragraph 109 of the National Planning and Policy Framework. She goes on to say that the application has provided no results in terms of a significant impact on highway safety, and the objectors have provided no evidence of impact on highway safety either. The Lancashire County Council Highways Authority are mindful of the precedent that has been set by previous planning applications, and this was examined at an appeal by the Inspectorate. On the matter of, and to quote, on the matter of additional traffic, whilst there may be problems created by indiscriminate parked vehicles, the inspector agreed that the extra vehicular movements attributable to 2 new houses would not have a noticeable effect on highway safety, given the number of other dwellings that use the access to Keighley Road and Skipton Old Road. She says that this application has been subject to close scrutiny by the County Council or the Highways Planning Authority in this particular development, and they are confident that they have all the facts to ensure that a balanced advice has been provided to Pendleborough Council. They're happy with their response to the local planning authority on this matter, and this confirms the report which was supplied by the expertly qualified highways engineer Chris Yarrow. I'd also like to point out that Mr. Foxley, who was the only qualified member of the Cone Area Committee, who is a locally qualified architect, would not support any proposal that refused permission on highway grounds, and he said that he would not support the proposal that for the reason why it came to this committee. I'm going to hand over to David Ramsden, who will give you further, Chair, if that's okay with you.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much, Mr. Cunningham. Mr. David Ramsden, you've got roughly about 11 minutes if you need them.
Oh, right, I will. Yeah, hopefully I'm nowhere near, thanks. Yeah, I've kind of just, my little script I was going to sort of read out, it's almost irrelevant if I'm honest, because it's mainly, this discussion is regarding highways, access, existing dwellings and so on. And there's so in terms of design and everything else, I mean, that's already sorted, everyone's happy. Just want to make obvious that the proposal is for 2 quite modest 3-bedroom dwellings. We're not looking at big 5-bed detached where you might have God knows how many vehicles sort of stationed there. These are really not very large dwellings. In terms of impact, and the increase in traffic movement has already been borne out, is negligible and cannot be, on scrutiny, you cannot suggest that it will make any impact to the problems that are already there. When I listen to the objectors, and it's fair, it's fair enough. I'm sure some of the worries about construction traffic are valid, I would say, but in terms of ongoing and living there, I kind of wonder, it sounds so awful in terms of the traffic and moving and everything, and this is before these 2 little houses are built. I kind of wonder that why aren't you trying to do something about improving traffic and passing places and junctions already if it's so horrendous? Because we've not built yet, and yet all I'm hearing from everyone on the objection is how horrendous the whole area is. We've already identified that increasing 2 dwellings is not going to affect that materially at all. So I kind of worry. I also worry, and from the previous committee particularly, I'll be quite honest, as a professional that I've been qualified for 150 years probably, I took exception, and I took legal advice as well, which I'm sitting on, but I took exception to criticism, which is public and out on video on YouTube, that both my client and myself are putting forward information that is effectively inaccurate. And some of the language was beyond inaccurate in terms of what they were suggesting. Everything that we've done, the drawings are from Revit surveys, GPS surveys, the heights, the levels, the widths, and everything that we produce are taken from that, and they're incredibly accurate. So just to say everything you see, I'll stand by, and don't be, there's a lot of emotion here, but don't be sort of swayed by flippant comments that this is wrong, that's right. There's so many things here that don't stand scrutiny. It's rather worrying for me. And again, I'm happy for open files, meet people on site. I'll bring our GPS equipment, and quite happy to do that. So, in terms of the actual scheme, for me, it's a little private road serving 2 dwellings, no increase, there's no impact. We all know this now, it's been proven. Forget the old inspectors' comments from 30 years ago. Yes, it's been thrown in, but that's not the point here. We can park that information. Going forward, traffic, as we're now predicting in our practice and the schemes that we're working for, the big house builders, they're looking at reduced numbers. The traffic movement's going to reduce in terms of people working from home. Online shopping has a net decrease in traffic movement, not an increase. It decreases traffic movement. The way that working practices are going forward, and also the way that we're using vehicles and shared vehicles. So the longer term impact is actually reducing. Now, in terms of construction, and it's a fair worry for the neighbours. I fully get it. I would just throw in though the caveat that when you want your extension building and you have, and you bring your construction traffic in, which you do, and your skips around the corner, which are there now, I kind of wonder how you get your vehicles in. But my suggestion to Peter and my client was, well, why don't we just negate that and let's try and be the good neighbour and offer this traffic management and deliver and collect during the construction period under a proper traffic management plan through via Skipton Old Road. And the chap that mentioned it earlier, just at the end of his the last probably previous presentation, mentioned that yes, there's conditions, but these can be ignored. No, they can't be ignored. Conditions are a legal requirement for my client to execute as part of the project. And there is obviously a legal route to take by the local authority if we don't execute those conditions correctly. There's enforcement action, and I've seen it happen, and it does. So that if it gives comfort, the conditions are legally binding, and if there is any traffic conditions in terms of delivery, collection, etc., those are binding. So I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of my client that is quite happy to put in concrete that delivery to the site and collection during the construction process will be from a proper managed area on Skipton Old Road. I kind of hope that helps. I'm sorry to sound a little bit miserable, but there are a few things on the previous meeting that I found unpalatable, really. But anyway, I think that's me done, really. But any questions, I'm happy to answer. But thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk here.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ramsden. And can I first of all thank everybody that's spoken and kept to the time limit that I requested. You were all very succinct and to the point as part of the debate. So I hope everybody's clear on that. Neil, is there anything that you need to share with us before I open it up?
No, Chairman, just a couple of minor points, Chairman, or perhaps major. Chairman, it was said that you can only consider highways issues. Clearly, that's legally not correct. The whole application's in front of you. I'm not advocating you take any particular course of action, but just legally you can discuss every part of this application and decide on every part of it. So I think Mr. Ramsden said it was only the access issue here. It isn't. It's the whole application that you are legally deciding on. Chairman, 2 other points. Construction traffic, I think, is an issue here that I think can be controlled by condition, Chairman. It won't be ideal there, but Chairman, we've had, I think again, Mr. Ramsden said, we've had lots of applications for extensions and developments along Bents Lane, and they've had deliveries there, and I think there is a way to manage that. Chairman, the issue here under the National Planning Policy Framework is whether there will be unacceptable impacts on highway safety. That's the test that unacceptable impacts. There will be an impact, clearly, because there will be a very small amount of additional traffic, but there will be, but that's the test. Or whether there will be severe impacts on the highway network. Chairman, 2 houses will not have a severe impact on the highway network. So my suggestion to committee is that you concentrate on the substantive issue, which is whether there will be an unacceptable impact on highway safety. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thanks, Neil. Okay, I'm going to open it up for debate, and I've got a number of hands that have gone up. And the first hand is Councillor David Whip. David?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I paid a visit to this application site yesterday, together with Tom Whip, who very kindly held a phone camera. And I'm going to share my screen with that. So this is as you turn off Bents onto the access track, and this is only a few seconds long, but and forgive the muck on the windscreen. But here we are coming down. That on the left there was suggested as a passing place, and on your right there's suggested passing place, and then in front of you is the application site at the end of that part of the track. My view is that there will be an unacceptable impact on highway safety, and that accordingly this application should be refused, and I would be happy to move that, and I will do so.
Okay. Do you just want to unshare your screen, David, so I can see people?
There you go.
Thank you for that. Councillor Brian Newman, are you seconding Councillor David Whip, or do I need to look somewhere else?
No, I will second that, Chair. And could I also speak?
Of course you can.
Right, thank you. Mr. Peter Cunningham indicated that the lane has a slow speed, which to me indicates hazards. If it's a slow speed lane, which it could be a line of sight, it could be anything. But also the lane, as far as I'm concerned, would not hold up to the weight of wagons going up and down there without a lot of money being spent on it, including the drains. So that is all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Next I have Jonathan Nixon. Jonathan?
Thank you, Chairman. I was just going to ask if we could possibly have a site visit on this one, because for the councillors who can't get there during the day, I would say seeing access to the site is well worth it. You've just seen Councillor David Whip's video there. I had the unfortunate, I unfortunately went down Bent Lane when I went on my site visit and nearly lost my bumper. I had to reverse all the way back up. I said this at Cornwall District Committee. The access is atrocious and unacceptable. I don't mind the design, that's fine. I think we should keep pushing for access via the applicant's driveway. If that was the case, then I would support the application, but I would ask for a site visit, please, Chairman.
Okay. Is there somebody to support deferring this for a site visit? Go on, Jonathan, I'll support you. Nobody else will.
Thank you.
Okay, next I've got Councillor Sarah Coburn-Price. Sarah?
I would have supported Jonathan for a site visit, except for the fact that Councillor Whip gave us a very handy video. I would say, I'm not going to go on endlessly about the access, but it's called Bents and Bent Lane for a reason. The clue is in the name. It is bent. And actually, I rarely go down there because either way, it's problematic, whether you're coming onto Skipton Old Road or Keighley, which is the sort of final destination. But there's a bit by the cottages, which wasn't on the video, which I'm sure that other councillors that know it would attend, whereby you sort of, I'm not saying high speed, but if you see clear road, you're sort of like, I'm going for it, because otherwise you'd have to reverse onto Skipton Old Road. And I think that's the point about the highway safety. Any accident will be slow speed, but it will all be involving reversing. You will be reversing out of the track, which doesn't have a name. It's just like a rutty track. And probably what hasn't been made clear is that this is a conservation area. So this rutty track is actually a footpath, and it gives on to the Lidget Triangle. So it's important that it's maintained like that. It's important that it's not tarmacked. So I think that any accident you have would be to do with reversing, and because of people feeling panicky, they'd be reversing from Bents onto Skipton Old Road or from the track onto Bents, and then just very short space after Bents, you've got the bend of Bent Lane, if that doesn't sound like I'm overstressing the Bents element, but I really can't overstress the Bents element. It's very bent. So I think that the highway safety I would like to support, but if you actually read the report, you will see that there are concerns. Rosemary Lyons has some concerns re the conservation area, and she is concerned about the massing. Oh, Neil's shaking his head at me. No? Well,
all right, Sarah, if you finish what you've got to say, then I'll bring Neil in.
I just want to make sure that those concerns are fully dealt with, and I'm sure that Neil can deal with those on condition if they're to do with render or timber fences. We're down to small details. This is about the fourth or third iteration of these houses, and I want to stress that they're much, much better than they were when we first saw them. But as one of the residents said, I think it was Sharon Dale, it's clear that this development could happen, but it would be best, and LCC say it would be best, if the access was from Skipton Old Road. Obviously, during the construction period, as I think Louise Hopkinson said, there would be chaos on Skipton Old Road because there'd be a traffic system in place and one way, and it's not a wide road anyway. But it is doable, though chaotic. And I know that in building, we can't really take that into consideration. So I think on highway safety, and for me, the massing, I would like to, I don't know whether Councillor Whip would take that as a friendly sort of amendment to his proposal, that he includes the sort of scale as well, because a slightly smaller development off Skipton Old Road, I think honestly would please everybody, including most of the residents that have spoken here tonight.
Any smaller.
Sorry, with respect, if I can ask those members of the public, please, that have already spoken, not to speak. David, are you prepared to accept Sarah's friendly suggestion before I move on?
I would welcome Mr. Watson's comments. I am not minded to accept it at present.
Okay, that's fine. Neil, I'll bring you in a bit. I've got other speakers at the moment. Next, I've got Councillor David Clegg.
Thank you, Chairman. The part with this I find it hard to get my head round is the initial traffic report from LCC was quite clear in what it said, that this was not a safe access along the route of that track at the back. And I think they were right. I think when they came with that report, I think they had got it right. Now, for some reason, LCC have changed their opinion. I can't understand why, because the track's still the same track. The amount of houses that are already accessed off that track is the same number, and the amount of houses that are going to be built so that the access is along that track is still the same. So what has made can it change their mind? I don't know. It's just mind blowing, and I think they got it right the first time when they said it wasn't an acceptable access, and that is why I seconded the refusal at Colne area. It has been said this evening that any more that there isn't an unacceptable impact on that track because of the traffic. Well, I think there is, because there is so much traffic using that track as it is now, and we've all seen what the track looks like. It was in David's video. We all know what Bent and Bent Lane are like, and I think every one of us that's used any of those roads have had problems with them in the past, with someone coming the other way. So, in my opinion, any extra traffic whatsoever on that track would be an unacceptable impact. And I haven't changed my mind since it was at Colne area, and I will still be voting in favour of refusal.
Okay, thank
you,
David.
Chairman.
Then I've got next Yvonne Tennant. Yvonne?
Okay, I noticed when I was looking through this, there are 20 conditions on this application. My friend, who was a senior planning officer, once said to me that if any application has more than 10 conditions on, then it's not viable. And for that reason, I will be refusing the application too.
Okay, thanks, Yvonne. Neil, some colleagues have asked to learn from some words of wisdom from you before I take it to the vote. Is there anything that you need to pick up?
Just very shortly, concisely, hopefully. Chairman, there isn't a building style around there. And there isn't even a totally eclectic mix of housing, because some housing around there is not the best design. There's some very good designs. Chairman, in terms of our design iterations, we've gone through a number of changes, different styles, different forms of housing, to a point where Rosemary Lyons, I know a lot of people rely on her comments. She's satisfied that we've got over the line, despite us, or not despite us, after having worked very hard to get all changes in design, not always willingly, but we have got over the line to the point where you've got a very simplistic design. It will not be overbearing in the locality. It's simple form, and I couldn't advise you to go on a design, because there's nothing really to hang a refusal in terms of design. Highway issues, I hear what people are saying on highways. That's really where I would go with a refusal, Chairman.
Okay, thanks, Neil. I've had an indication to speak for the first time from Councillor Nadeem Ahmed. Nadeem, I'll bring you in, and then I've got two others that have indicated to speak, but I'm minded not to bring those in. So, Nadeem? Thank you.
We've had a long debate on this and a long discussion, so I want to thank all the residents who've spoken. For us councillors who are not as familiar with the area, listening to the residents, I've had a number of emails from residents too. We've heard from the applicant, and colleagues have spoken as well in great detail. As far as I'm concerned, I think it's a clear-cut refusal, this, as far as I'm concerned. In terms of the highway issues and the concerns that have been raised regarding that. So I will be voting to refuse this application.
Okay, thank you. I have two proposals on the table, and I'll take them in terms of the order that the Constitution allows me. So the first one is for a deferral on this for a site visit, moved by Jonathan, seconded by myself. So I will call each councillor's name out in turn. If you're for the site visit, for. If you're against. If you want to abstain, abstain. Councillor Nadeem Ahmed.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Mohammed Aslam.
Against.
Councillor David Clegg.
Against.
Councillor Sarah Coburn-Price.
Against.
Councillor Tommy Cooney.
Against.
Councillor Mike Goldthorpe.
Against.
Councillor Mohammed Iqbal. For. Councillor Yasser Iqbal.
Against.
Councillor Ashad Mahmood.
Against.
Councillor Brian Newman.
Against.
Jonathan.
For.
Councillor David Whip.
Against.
And Councillor Yvonne Tennant.
Against.
Okay, Jonathan, I think we've lost that one. I'll move on to the substantive motion, which was to refuse, as moved by Councillor David Whip, seconded by Councillor Brian Newman. So again, I will call your name out. If you're in favour of refusal, 4. If you're against. If you want to abstain, abstain. Councillor Nadeem Ahmed.
4.
Councillor Mohammed Aslam.
4.
Councillor David Clegg.
4.
Councillor Sarah Coburn Price.
4.
Councillor Tommy Cooney.
4.
Councillor Mike Goldthorpe.
4.
Councillor Mohammed Iqbal. Abstain. Councillor Yasser Iqbal.
Against.
Councillor Ashad Mahmood.
Against.
Councillor Brian Newman.
4.
Councillor Jonathan Nixon.
Abstain.
Councillor David Whip.
4.
And Councillor Yvonne Tennant.
4.
Okay. I make that the refusal is carried by a majority of this committee. Can I thank those members of the public that have come to speak this evening? You're more than welcome to stop for the rest of the meeting, but if you want to leave the meeting, you can simply just sign out, and thank you for coming. Okay, colleagues, the next item that I have speakers on is item 9. It is item 9, which is the draft Nelson Master Plan, and I would invite Mr. William Stevenson first. Sorry, before I do, Mr. Stevenson, Councillor Brendan, when you've got your hand up, I don't know whether it's an old hand. Okay, thank you. The floor's yours.
The Nelson Master Plan says that Nelson is surrounded by attractive countryside, and this green space is important. It says that Nelson is one of the most deprived areas in the country. It says that we should help to encourage healthier lifestyles, including walking. And Pendle Council has announced a climate emergency, and accessible green spaces and trees to reduce carbon emissions are vital to its climate action plan. But slipped into the Nelson Master Plan are a number of housing developments designed, quote, to support the town centre by ensuring it attracts spend from its growing catchment area, end quote. One of these is a valued green space, a rich natural habitat enjoyed and used every day by local people in Nelson and Colne for their health and well-being. This space is called Gibb Hill. Gibb Hill has one of the richest habitats for biodiversity, where deer, barn owls, kestrels and sparrowhawks, including 15 birds of national concern and diverse butterflies and flowers, have their home. Some of the meadows are so rich in species they have been designated biological heritage status, and the meadows and ancient hedgerow below Castercliff Iron Age fortside are rare habitats in England. The large field in the centre of Gibb Hill meets the criteria for local natural importance status, but Pendle Council has never confirmed this in their plans, despite 2 requests by the Lancashire Wildlife Trust. It's too easy for Pendle Council to earmark this site to increase the suburban housing sprawl in an area which has suffered far more than its fair share of housing developments on greenfield sites. Pendle Council owns the site and stands to make a lot of money from selling it and fulfil government housing quotas. But Pendle Council can do better than taking a quick win whilst robbing the local community of a precious green space and an important natural habitat for Pendle. Don't hand Gibb Hill over to greedy developers who are solely interested in making a profit and moving on. There are better solutions. Nelson has a legacy of derelict mills littered in and around our town. Dale Mill, Throstle Nest Mill, to name just 3, which are included as reasonable alternatives for housing development in the Pendle local plan. These sites, which are a blight on Nelson, could be repurposed into good housing using the government's Brownfield Sites funding, which is underspent in Pendle. We know brownfield sites are more costly to develop, but it's worth it. The council also has a substantial underspend in its budget over a pandemic year. And through Pearl, which has tackled difficult sites, such as derelict Oak Mill in Colne and the challenge of Briarfield Mills, now Northlight, it can be done. Don't kid yourselves that building a huge housing estate on Gibb Hill will support Nelson Town Centre. It's not close enough to the town. People will go to Asda or Spar instead. But transforming brownfield, like the former Colorol factory, and a number of sites listed as reasonable alternatives in the Pendle local plan, which are closer to the town centre, could make a real difference. Along with the repurposing of empty sites and empty offices in Nelson, bringing people into the town centre to live, this strategy will make a real difference in revitalising Nelson. And it will protect green spaces like Gib Hill for present and future generations, providing a vital green lung and preventing the towns of Nelson and Colne from merging into a single urban sprawl. Thank you.
Thank you very much, William. Next, I have Janine Snowden. Janine?
Hang on. Okay, here I am. Can you hear me?
I can indeed.
Excellent. So, good evening. I'm actually here again for Gib Hill, as you could probably tell. You'd be going to be discussing this in the draft master plan. And it's really just a kind of a plea from the people, really. I've been asked to speak on behalf of some of the residents of Nelson and Colne that live around the area of Gib Hill. And some of these people live in terraced houses with no gardens. Some people don't drive. And they've asked me to convey to you the strength of feeling and love that exists for the green and open area that's Gib Hill. So Gib Hill is used by hundreds of locals for recreational purposes, walking, jogging, bird watching, nature. It's a lifeline to families without much in the way of disposable income. It's important for people's mental health, and never more so than in the recent lockdown months. It gives us fresh air and open views across to Pendle Hill, and it enhances our sense of well-being. Primary schools use it for field trips. The community centre uses it for physical activity. And it's an area enmeshed into people's routines and daily lives, teeming with wildlife and flowers. So I've got a quote from Rachel, who says, "Gib Hill for us is an amazing getaway. 2 seconds walk from our house. We walk the dogs across it. We picnic there. The kids camp and play there. It's a safe place for them and us. We have seen roe deer, barn owls, hares, frogs and bats, and have learned as a family about nature." Another local resident is an avid bird watcher. She has sent me photographs of a sparrowhawk, a song thrush, a redwing, woodpeckers, and all taken at Gib Hill. Many of the birds are on the RSPB red list, and these birds are already endangered, and she feels helpless that you may develop the countryside in which they live in and take away her passion and her pastime. So the community on both Colne and Nelson feels so strongly, in fact, that they have set up a charity called Hillside Heroes. And this is to try and protect and enhance the ecology of this area at Gib Hill. The other point is, which was raised earlier, is that there's no green belt on that side of the valley. And surely a green and pleasant space between Colne and Nelson is beneficial in stopping the urban sprawl effect of one town merging into another. This land is important in that respect, and no one wants to see Nelson and Colne merge together. We are separate, and we want to remain so. So the point is, don't rush into developing this piece of much loved and open countryside just so you can easily fulfil a housing target. Surely the Nelson Master Plan is there to look at what we already have. Concentrate on improving the areas that actually need improving. And please don't make a huge mistake here by destroying this area. Gib Hill is a community asset and should be recognised as one. It should be protected and given to the people as an area of wildlife conservation. If you develop it, you destroy community space. If you destroy community space that's this important, you irrevocably damage the community you are here to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. And then I've got Azar Ali. Azar?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that. Can I first of all thank William and Janine for what they've said. And I don't particularly want to repeat some of the things they've said, but I think it's really important to look at how long this campaign's been going on for. This campaign's been going on for at least 20 years, 25 years, if not more. I remember working with a cross-party, working with Dorothy Lord and Tony Greaves and others at the time when we set up Save Gib Hill, and on the Waterside side we set off Get Knotted, which was residents again trying to stop development on that side, and then save Gib Hill to try and save this green lung between Nelson and Colne. In your appendix for this item, in table 4.1, you talk about opportunity sites in Nelson outside of the town centre, and Gib Hill is mentioned there as the first site. It says Gib Hill, and it says indicates 216 dwellings. Well, I've got a message for you from the people in Nelson and Colne. Please leave it alone. This is the only green lung between Nelson and Colne. 20 odd years ago, I saw plans that John Kirk, who was then one of the directors of the council, unearthed for me, and Dean will remember him, I'm sure. He unearthed drawings which showed a clear road that came up through Brightcliffe Avenue over the railway line and then ended up coming at the top, and it was linked from Mosnell Road all the way through to Knots Lane. That would be absolutely disastrous, not only for the environment, but it would be a rat run between Nelson and Colne. And that's what campaigners fought against then. And the same will happen now. You will end up having access across those sites, and they're not needed. People like John Lamb, who's worked tirelessly with residents in the past, and Alison and John Plackett, who live on in the area of Walton Lane, who are bird watchers. They're the ones who worked hard and with Wildlife Trust and came up with the biological heritage status evidence. They came up with other evidence as well to protect the wildlife that was there. The last time I remember this coming up is in 2013. I'm looking at an article in the Evening Telegraph, and the headline is "Condemnation of Political Plan to Sell Green Lung Between Nelson and Colne." And Norman, who's on that picture, who lived on Mosnell, sadly passed away, but other people are still there. And in there, apart from my quote, there's a quote here from Councillor Cooney, Councillor Joe Cooney, who was then leader of the council, and he said that less than half of the site's 12 hectares will be developed. He added, and I quote, "In this challenging financial climate, the amount of money coming into Pendle through government funding and grants has reduced. We have no option but to look at other ways of generating capital. By disposing of these sites that have real development potential, we can continue with our priority of regenerating the borough and encouraging economic growth." And then there's a quote from campaigner John Plackett, who said that last time Gib Hill was under threat, hundreds of local people jumped to its defence, and it's important they make their voices heard again. Janine and William as just two people out of well over 1,000, 1,200 now who've joined the Protecting Pendle Countryside group and other groups as well. And they're passionate about saving this. And last week or 10 days ago at the Nelson Town Council meeting, this, again, Gib Hill was up for discussion. The Town Council resolved unanimously across all parties that Pendle Council is approached and asked to transfer Gib Hill to the Town Council as a public body so that it can be preserved and developed as a nature reserve for generations to come, and for them to work with organisations, and Hillside Heroes is one of them who's applied, and others, to attract funding to be able to develop that in the coming years. So therefore, Chair, I would ask councillors to consider actually tonight removing Gib Hill from the master plan that's going to go out for consultation, and by doing that you send a very strong signal to the people in Nelson and Colne that you are serious about climate emergency, you're serious about supporting the environment, and that you're serious about listening and putting people first in Pendle. And by doing that, you'll take that out of it. And I would then also ask councillors to consider engaging in dialogue with Nelson Town Council, looking at a community asset transfer and making sure that this piece of land between Nelson and Colne, the only green lung, 12 hectares, as Councillor Joe Cooney has stated, is the actual land that's preserved for generations to come. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Azan. Can I thank both William and Janine for their contributions? I've got a number of councillors who've indicated to speak, but before I bring them in, Dean Langton as the Chief Executive, as the Senior Officer in terms of this report. Dean, do you want to say something, and then I'll open it up for debate?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So just for members' benefit, I sense the mood here, so please take what I say in that context. I do understand the feeling, particularly of members of the public who live around that particular area. In terms of the master plan, it's been in development for a good period of time, and it's supported by the town investment plan that we've submitted recently as well. If you look on page 5 of the master plan, and particularly the weaknesses of Nelson, one of the things that's picked out there is the current residential offer in Nelson. and I think most members are familiar with the residential offer at the moment, is that in Nelson it is predominantly terraced houses, 2 up, 2 down terraced houses, some of which is of varying quality. And of course, that what that's led to over a good period of time is values in this area are incredibly low. And if some members are aware of the Housing Market Renewal Programme, the purpose of that programme was to invest in areas in order to try to change the nature of the housing market and to provide aspirational housing to people in those areas so that they are able to get out of the terraced houses where they choose to do so into better quality houses. So there's a responsibility there for all of us to provide that aspiration to residents to be able to move up the housing ladder over a period of time. And historically, the reason Gib Hill was acquired by the council, and I accept it was a good long time ago, it was for the purposes of providing additional housing to Nelson. It isn't a surprise that it would be developed for housing. That was the reason it was acquired for in the past. So I think Councillor Ali is correct. There has been a long campaign, but equally it was acquired for that very reason. And I'd just like members to be aware of that. Just on some of the comments that have been made, the rest of the sites that are in the master plan for housing, of course, or majority, all but one I think, are not in the council's ownership. They are in someone else's ownership. So quite a number of the mills currently being used, they can't be converted into housing because we don't own them. And unless we speak to the developer and, the owners about that, then, we just don't own them. So we don't have that control. There was reference to a brownfield fund that the government has. That's not available to Pendle Council. That's only available to mayoral combined authorities. So we don't have access to that fund. Earlier on in the meeting, we talked about the Levelling Up Fund and being able to access that. And of course, housing may well form part of that, and developing some of the brownfield sites that we've got. Yes, we'd like to do that, but £20 million, as I said, will not go a long way in doing that. It sounds a lot of money, but in the context of developing brownfield sites, it doesn't, I'm afraid. So we would need a substantial amount of money for that. So I just wanted to make those comments to put why it's in the master plan. I suppose my plea to members would be, let's get it out to consultation and see what the members of the public feel, and we'll, feed those comments back as we finalise the master plan. At least we'll get a feeling for why, the reasons why it shouldn't be in there, and equally what other solutions there are in order to provide that aspirational housing to people who currently don't have that opportunity. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Dean. Okay, I'm going to open it up for debate. I don't know if people have muted because my voice is echoing back to me. So if you're not on mute, if you won't please mind unless I call you to speak. First speaker I have is Councillor Yvonne Tennant.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Before we start, can I just say I live in a 122-year-old terrace myself, and I would rather live in that than a new build. But there you go, horses for courses, I suppose. There are some wonderful ideas in the Nelson Master Plan which should be saluted, such as repurposing the Arndale Centre and plans for regenerating the town centre. However, there are others, and one in particular which I would strongly object to. But firstly, I'd like to thank those who have spoken so eloquently about saving Gib Hill from development. Pages 18 and 19 of the draft Nelson Master Plan refers to development on Gib Hill. And as Councillor Azhar Ali said, reference number 1 of table 4.1 on page 19 suggests 216 dwellings on the site. Oddly enough, the same amount that was given outline planning permission for at Further Clough Head almost 5 years ago. Further Clough Head, another green space on the edge of Nelson, which is currently in the process of being decimated. Residents' issues and concerns were overlooked then, and when they were raised again in 2019 and early in 2020, we were told that it was too late to do anything as outline planning permission had already been approved. Goodness, we even had a councillor from outside of Nelson happily pushing Further Clough Head under the proverbial bus, as long as it meant his area was safe from development. This cannot be allowed to happen again. I want Gib Hill and the very notion of any development there to be taken out of the Nelson Master Plan. My reason for this is not only a much shared concern about loss of biodiversity, the harm it will do to our wildlife and the disruption to nearby residents, but also I believe its inclusion in the Nelson Master Plan undermines the larger consultation on the Pendle Local Plan, Part 2. Now, a cynical person may even think that its inclusion in the Nelson Plan was a way of sidestepping the consultation on the local plan, and thus attempting to create a backdoor for development on Gib Hill. The draft Nelson Master Plan also makes great play about preserving and developing more green spaces around the town. So, how exactly does building on a much loved green space fit into that category? I would argue that it doesn't. Nelson Town Council, as Councillor Azhar Ali said, voted unanimously last week to ask for Gib Hill to be transferred into their care so that they can preserve it for the people of Pendle and save it from the developers. I wonder if Nelson Town Council have ever been asked about their opinion on the Nelson Master Plan. It would certainly seem incongruous if they hadn't, that a town council had been left out of discussions pertaining to their town. Gib Hill should be handed over to Nelson Town Council as a community asset transfer, and Nelson Town Council work with a community group such as the Hillside Heroes to protect the site and turn it into a nature reserve. If Gib Hill is not taken out of the Nelson Master Plan at this stage, it makes a mockery of the consultation on the broader local plan. Running 2 or more consultations at the same time only causes confusion amongst residents and councillors. Again, a cynical person could argue that confusion is the real. I move that the potential development on Gib Hill is taken out of the Nelson Master Plan and would request that other councillors, wherever they live or represent in Pendle, support this as a first step in preserving our green spaces across the borough. Thank you.
Okay, Yvonne, just before I bring Councillor Ashton Mahmood in, can I just then confirm that in terms of the other recommendations that you agreeing to the draft master plan goes out for consultation with that exception?
Yes, with that taken out, yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Ashad?
Thank you, Chairman. In the master plan, I welcome the ambitious plans to regenerate Nelson Town Centre. When complete, will make a significant contribution to long-term economic sustainability of Nelson and Pendle as a whole. I mean, regenerating our town centres is key to maintaining thriving communities, and it's more important than ever as we navigate an economic recovery from the impact of COVID-19, especially over the last year or so. But in relation to Gib Hill, I think these plans will create significant harm to an area of much needed open green space and a site of outstanding natural beauty. And I think for that reason, we should protect that site. We have always supported for that to be to have that site for open green space. For I think it has a lot of natural, outstanding natural beauty there. So I think we should protect that. And we need to ensure that we are making the most of the brownfield sites across Nelson Town and also Pendle as a whole. So I personally I very strongly oppose the release of Gib Hill for housing, and we should protect this site, and will happily second what's already been proposed by County Councillor Azhar Ali and Yvonne Tennant.
Okay. Next, I've got Councillor David Whip. David?
Thank you, Chairman. Together with others, I've campaigned against the development of Gib Hill for several decades, and I'm delighted that it appears councillors are moving towards the sort of protection which we've long called for. I won't belabour the point, but it does reflect something of a U-turn from the meeting that we had in January. where, well, anyway, I won't go on about it. In terms of the Nelson Master Plan, I agree. The Gib Hill suggestion of opportunity be removed. I think there's a question mark as to where development will go in Nelson, because the local plan that we've already got, the core strategy, calls for 2/3 of Pendle's housing requirement to be in that Nelson, Colne, Briarfield corridor. So I think Nelson councillors are going to have a good hard look at where development is acceptable in the sorts of quantities that would bring in the numbers demanded by government. And in terms of asset transfers, just a gentle reminder that the Nelson Colne boundary runs through Gib Hill, and I think that any community asset transfers ought to be on the basis of to each of the respective town councils, not to Nelson Town Council exclusively. And so I would support a resolution that looks at that sort of community asset transfer and take it forward on that basis. Mr. Chairman, you've got several other speakers, so I'll shut up now.
Okay, thanks, David. Next, I've got Councillor Sarah Coburn-Price. Sarah?
Well, I was all alone while praising the town investment plan of not voting for it last time, and I'll still not be voting for it this time, because I see that Trafalgar House, which is an important heritage building in the town centre, is still potentially there for demolition, and I spot that the council has now bought Trafalgar House, so I'm very against that. I think, again, a lot of people would have already said there is much that is superb in this plan. Tiny typo, page 22, paragraph 9, the word recognise. But generally, all the talk about cycling routes, through routes, talking about the canal, the sense of arrival, the importance of the sort of key destination buildings, all of those things, as well as a bit more greening in the centre of the town. Yes, absolutely. A lot of people have spoken about Gib Hill. I agree. I think that it would cause the settlements to conjoin, which we don't want. We know that it's already a section of it, a biological heritage site. I think that as a very minimum, Lancashire Wildlife Trust are very keen to carry out more surveys. John Lamb says that there needs to be 3 surveys to really understand the biological diversity of the site. That is so important. We need to make sure those 3 surveys are done. And so therefore, I think there is general consensus among the councillors that we are very happy. Nobody else is with me on Trafalgar House, but they're happy with the sort of thrust of this plan for Nelson, but would like to see what is called a potential opportunity site taken out. And I think that that would be a really sensible thing to do. And then this could come back to the very next meeting. And if you take out Trafalgar House, I might even vote for it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sarah. Before I bring the next speaker in, if I can draw your attention to page 32, which talks about Trafalgar House. And if you see the wording, it says, obviously, we've recently acquired the building, but we're looking for further funding to bring the building site back into use. And we're looking around various options around the retention, demolition, development, redevelopment of the building. So it's everything's open at the moment. I mean, if you can use your good officers to get enough funding to redevelop that site, I'll be the first one to support you. But Clearly, if I could just finish, Sarah, clearly funding is an issue, but please let me assure you, and that's why page 32 makes it clear, if it was down for demolition, the words of retention, development of the building would not be there. So we're looking at all. So we're looking at all options. So I hope you get that reassurance, and no doubt you will now support the motion as is set out.
Well, I'm not going to, but I think we have the opportunity with the 20 million from this levelling up fund to look at special sites like that. Perhaps not this amount of money because Nelson's already got it, but there are lots and lots of sites in Colne that actually 20 million would go an awful long way to remediating cleared sites or brownfield sites within the settlement boundary, and that is already all laid out within the Colne neighbourhood plan. So you wouldn't have to employ any consultants. The work's already been done.
And I'm grateful for any work that's been done. But as Dean has alluded to, and I alluded to right at the beginning, 20 million sounds a lot, but if we look at the whole of Pendle and some of the projects that need to be done, 20 million isn't even a drop in the ocean. But that's a debate for another day, hopefully. Next, I've got Councillor Nadeem Ahmed. Nadeem?
Thank you. Before I speak, I just got a quick question in terms of the boundary settlement. I've gone through the draft master plan, and what's I'm not clear about in my own head is in terms of the boundary changes. The boundaries changed, I think, at least once, if not twice. I just want to confirm, where has the boundary been extended to?
Sorry, which boundary are you talking about, Nadeem?
The Nelson, the centre. The centre boundaries changed, and I think there was mention of the White Walls industrial estate at some stage included within the Nelson area.
No, that my understanding, Dean, is for the town investment plan.
Yeah, that was for the purpose of the Nelson Town deal and the town investment plan, whereas the master plan looks specifically at the town centre and in essence redraws the town centre to make it slightly smaller. There's always been an aspiration to have a smaller town centre because it is quite spread out as it is at the moment. So that's what's in this plan. It's about having a smaller town centre. And it's on page 31 as an example.
That's fine. Thank you for the clarification, Dean. I welcome the Nelson Draft Master Plan as it gives us all an opportunity and a chance for us all to work together to try and rejuvenate Nelson and bring new life into Nelson. And obviously, for us to do that, we need to set out our aims and objectives and our strategic goals, which this report does to some extent. And more importantly, I think, in my view, setting the objectives and then how we achieve them objectives is a crucial part. Because it's okay saying we'll do X, Y, and Z. It's actually getting there is the difficult part, which we all know. I just want to refer to some of the comments which have been. Dean, you talked about the housing element on the Gib Hill site. I take your point in terms of some people out there, yes, they might want to see that site developed and housing on that site, which is different to what we have in terms of the general housing, the terraced houses in Nelson. But I think the view of the councillors, and I believe the vast majority of the public, is clear that people don't want that site to be developed on. And I think for us members, it's a balancing act in terms of do we want to see development on that site, or do we listen to the residents and their reasons for retaining that site? And I also understand your point, Dean, in terms of leaving it in there and consulting on it, and then we get a broader discussion and people's views from a wider area. But I think my own view is quite strongly that we do need to, as other members have said, that we do need to take that site out. I've got a number of comments in terms of reference on page 32, the A Centre. It's talking about the A Centre in terms of a medium priority. I think I would rather see that as a high priority rather than a medium, because of the decision also that's been made recently at full council. I think that needs to be higher up the agenda. So I would like to see that moved up and given more importance than it has done, please. I would move that as a change. Just going on back to Sarah's point about Trafalgar.
Just in terms of the air centre, Nadeem, I think that will be accepted. So
okay, yeah, please, thank you.
Okay.
Just for Sarah's point of view, could we? I mean, the reference to demolition there, to ease Sarah's concerns, could I request that the word demolition be taken out of there? If that would be accepted, please, Chairman.
I mean, my view is that we need to consult on all options, and I know where Sarah's coming from in trying to preserve it, and possibly yourself as well, Nadeem. But let's go out to consult on Trafalgar House, because there's a growing number of people that have approached me over the last number of years and said, look, it's a complete eyesore. Now, is it all an eyesore? At the moment, it clearly is, but is there an opportunity for the council to look for funding to redevelop, say, and protect the frontage of it? I would say, if there was, then yes, there is. But I don't think we should start limiting, because we've nothing on the table at the moment in terms of pounds and pennies to deal with Trafalgar House. Let's keep everything open for consultation. And, you know, if people of Nelson come back and say, let's look to demolish it, then if we've taken the word demolition out and we've no more funding to deal with Trafalgar House, then it'll be the eyesore that it has been for a number of years. So I mean, it's clearly Councillor Yvonne Tennant's motion, but I would urge her not to accept taking the words demolition out with respect.
Okay, thank you. I take your point. So I think the couple of changes which I think if they're accepted in terms of Gib Hill, the Air Centre, yeah, I'll leave it at that, Chairman. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Now I've got Councillor Yasser Iqbal next. Yasser?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I listened intently to the debate and heard what Councillor Yvonne Tennant had to say. I don't seek to repeat what she said. What I do say is I agree with the comments she's made. Perhaps the only thing I would suggest, Chair, is this, that I think, I'm not sure it was mentioned, it may be mentioned, I stand to be corrected if it was. Perhaps if I could suggest a friendly amendment to Councillor Yvonne's motion and suggest that we enter discussions with Nelson Town Council for an asset transfer. That's as a friendly amendment, if Councillor Tennant would.
I think that's what she moved, Yasser.
Yes, it was in there. What I said.
Right. Well, if that's already in there, then I'm happy with that.
Okay, I've got councillors who want to come in for a second time, but before I do, I've seen Neil's hand up, so I'll bring Neil in and then do a second round of some of the councillors who want to speak. Neil?
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, it's just a point really around Gib Hill, and I do understand, having been involved in the public inquiry in 2005, 2006 on that site, that there's a lot of strong views around that. Chairman, it is actually an allocated housing site now, so it is the council's current policy, because it's got an adopted plan, that site can come forward for development. I know we're re-looking at the situation in the proposed Part 2 local plan, Chairman. I realise that. My point is, I think, here about consistency. We are consulting on the Part 2 local plan, which does have this site to come forward for development, not at the 216, because I think there will be a range of interventions on that site, green spaces, etc., Chairman. But would it be a mixed message going out there to say, on one hand, we're consulting on development, but we take it out of the master plan? That may also be seen as preempting a decision on the local plan. Chairman, it was a point Councillor Whip said, there will be difficult choices to make, and we need to look at different sites and different opportunities to bring housing forward. Chairman, if I can put my perspective on this, I think it would be remiss to take it out of the master plan and not have a debate on there. If the debate comes back and the comments are to take it out and that's in line with the local plan, fine. But I think we were being consistent in our approaches if we took it out of the master plan for consultation, bearing in mind it is out there now already with the local plan. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Neil. Jonathan, you indicated to speak. I'll bring you in first because you've not spoken.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, for that. Totally agree with removing Gib Hill from the master plan as a proposed development site, but I do not agree with transferring it all to Nelson Town Council, because quite a few hectares of it are in Combe. I would like to see that basically removed from the motion.
Yeah, I think, Jonathan, Councillor Whip had suggested that the discussions take place with both respective town councils, and Yvonne accepted that.
Oh, sorry. Right. Okay. Well, the other point is, if they are transferred to the town councils, it's still not fully. I still say it's fairly open-ended about what can happen to it eventually. But anyway, that's just right. Okay. Well, that's fine. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I missed that.
Right. Okay. I've got 3 other councillors indicating they want to come in for a second time, so I'll give them that opportunity. Then I intend to move to the vote, and they are in the order of Councillor David Whip first, Councillor Sarah Coburn-Price, and then Councillor Yvonne's taken a hand down. That's fine. So it's Councillor David Whip and Councillor Sarah Coburn-Price, and I intend to move to the vote. David?
Thank you, Chairman. You've already picked up on the point that it is both Combe Town Council and Nelson Town Council in terms of a possible community asset transfer. I just wanted to make the point that during development of the town deal bid, the leaders of all 3 groups were asked if we wanted to include development at Gibb Hill within that town deal bid, and we, I think collectively, certainly myself and yourself, Chairman, gave a very firm no, and it wasn't included in the town deal. So I think, we've given a very clear steer previously that we don't expect it to go for development, and I think that officers need to listen very carefully to what we're saying.
Okay, and Sarah, you've still got your hand up.
I wonder whether I could speak directly to Yvonne, because it's clear to me that this land, which has obviously been the subject of a lot of controversy over many years when I didn't even live in Pendle, needs to be protected in perpetuity. And I know from being chairman of Combe Town Council for a little while that, in fact, any asset transferred by Pendle Borough Council could be disposed of within 10 years. And also, I am concerned that we've got Colne and Nelson, and 7.4 acres of it is in Colne. So you might have different management practices. I do feel instinctively that we'd be better off having one body, but it's perhaps too soon to say at this moment. So perhaps could I ask that you change your motion to something like investigate a body or bodies, without naming them, that could manage this land in perpetuity? Would that be reasonable?
Okay, I'll ask Yvonne the question. Yvonne, do you want to accept what Sarah's saying or not?
I'm quite happy with the perpetuity bit, but the investigate bit, no, I'm not. I don't care whether it's Colne Town Council and Nelson Town Council together, along with community groups like Hillside Heroes and Lancashire Wildlife Trust all working together. But if they can all work together to save it, then all good in perpetuity. Okay. But not investigate, because it kicks it down the road a bit.
All right, okay. I'm going to move to the vote now, ladies and gentlemen, because we've had a good debate on this. So the motion as agreed by, or the resolution as moved by Councillor Yvonne Tennant, seconded by Councillor Ashton Mahmood, with some friendly amendments. If you're in favour of that, for. If you're against. If you want to abstain, abstain. I shall call your names out.
Excuse me. Please, could we just hear the motion again, just very carefully? Thank you.
Jane, can you help, or shall I ask Yvonne?
Apologies, I've got it a bit piecemeal, so if Yvonne could reiterate it. I've got the gist of it, but
okay. The whole basis of the motion is that Gibb Hill and any prospect of development on Gibb Hill is taken out of the Nelson Master Plan, and that Gibb Hill should be transferred to Nelson Town Council in collaboration with others, but Nelson Town Council in the first place for safekeeping.
Sorry, Yvonne, I think you included from David Whip, Corn Town Council in that.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Nelson Town Council, Colne Town Council, and interested community organisations to be looked after for perpetuity.
Okay, and then point 2 is as written on the recommendations.
Chairman, might I just add a particular comment to that, if you don't mind? Of course, there are financial implications with what is being proposed, not least the potential loss of the development value from Gib Hill, which could be substantial. So I think it's only right that you as members consider the potential asset transfer in the context of knowing that information. So whilst I understand that members want to crack on with this, it would be advisable to have a report back on the transfer and the transfer process, if indeed that's what members choose to do.
My understanding is that once discussions have taken place with both Nelson and Corn Town Council, and Yvonne will correct me if I'm wrong, and anybody else, that ultimately, as we do with all the other transfers, clearly we need to agree to that as a council, and then presumably, because if the position is that we want to protect it from any development in the future, then as a council, as Pendle Council, I assume we would say to both respective town councils and anybody else that you cannot sell it on for development in the future, because the last thing that I would want is, for argument's sake, and I'm not saying this for a moment to either Nelson or Corn Town Council in their current situation, but there's nothing to stop another authority in the future in 20 years' time coming along and selling it all for 20 million quid. So that's where Dean's point is. And I think a report will be brought back to once we finalise the transfers for us to agree, because both parties have to agree. Is that a correct interpretation, Yvonne?
Yeah.
You nod your head. Okay. So if you're in favour of that, no, sorry, Nadeem, I'm going to move to the vote now.
Just want some clarification.
Go on then.
Please. Yeah. Is it not premature for us to make a decision to transfer it or suggest the town councils without any detailed discussion?
No, I think what the motion is saying is that discussion will take place. I mean, it may well be that Nelson and Corn Town Council turn around and say, well, we're definitely not interested, and then we're back to square one. But the intention isn't to simply just transfer it tomorrow morning. There's a discussion to be had, an agreement to be had, and we clearly need to protect what the residents want going forward as a Pendle Council as well.
So, sorry, I didn't mean in that sense. I meant in the sense that there could be other organisations, and I know there are other organisations who are interested. So I think we need to keep it general for discussions with other bodies.
Right, well, Yvonne's moved the motion. I mean, I don't have an amendment.
The motion included talks with other bodies, Nadeem. So
right,
okay, that's fine. As long as it includes other bodies, that's fine. Thank you.
I'm going to call each councillor's name out now. So if you're in favour, for; if you're against. If you want to abstain, abstain. Councillor Nadeem Ahmed.
For.
Councillor Mohammed Aslam.
For.
Councillor David Clegg.
For.
Councillor Sarah Coburn Price.
For.
Councillor Tommy Cooney.
For.
Councillor Mike Goldthorpe.
For.
Councillor Mohammed Iqbal. For. Councillor Yasser Iqbal.
For.
Councillor Ashad Mahmood.
For.
Councillor Brian Newman.
For.
Councillor Jonathan Nixon.
For.
Councillor David Whip.
For.
And Councillor Yvonne Tennant.
For.
That's a unanimous decision. Thank you very much for that. Could I thank both William and Janine and Azar, and you're more than welcome to stop for the rest of the meeting. But if you want to leave us, you can just sign out. Okay, I've no other speakers now, so I'm going to go back to the agenda. And item 4B we're on, which is a recommendation from Briarfield Area Committee about 10 apartments at the Powerhouse Gymnasium in Briarfield. There was an amendment report circulated earlier today by Jane to Council, which I hope you had the opportunity to read. Neil, is there anything that you need to say on this before I open it up?
Sharon Dale.
Is
now exiting.
No, Chairman, nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay. Who would like to kick off? Anybody?
Chair, it's Councillor
Yasser.
Yeah. Chair, this obviously came to Bradfield Area Committee in the last meeting, and it was refused, and I was one of the people who moved or supported the motion to refuse. And as you can see from the decision, it was mainly for the parking issue in which we refused it. Now, I think you mentioned, Chair, which is why I was slightly slower off the mark to unmute myself, about an amendment which has been emailed. I must say, was that emailed, did he say, Chair? Was it sent in?
It was email. He was dealing with from one of the conditions.
Right, okay. So I don't think there's any substantive changes there.
No, the recommendation hasn't changed as well.
Right, okay. Well, in that case, Chair, I'll address you and I'll have a quick scan through my emails, and if there's anything else, if I can reserve the right to come back on anything. So this is an application, as I said, Chair, which was unanimously supported by, well, in fact, it wasn't unanimous, as one dissent. But just to give a background as to this location, Chair, people may have driven past this. It's the old Powerhouse Gym, which is, I think, recently acquired by somebody new. Now, just behind Powerhouse Gym, there's the main mosque of Bryfield. You've got Blakely's right next to it, and you've got Santa's Pizza, who, although don't have a takeaway behind that location, but do all their prep work, and it's quite a busy junction. And of course, it's on the main road as well. And the reason why we took objection to it, Chair, in terms of parking, was that one of the recommendations or comments by LCC was that, in fact, some of the residents will be parking their cars on Wood Street, which is probably a couple hundred meters from there. And it was suggested there that that was just unreasonable. Nobody realistically living in the real world will park there. In fact, nobody that parks there now parks as far as Wood Street. They'll park on Oxford Street, which is right next to the gym. And even now, without the residential places, it causes a problem with parking, especially on days where there were the usual Friday prayers. Of course, times are slightly different now. So there are serious issues, Chair, which I think parking-wise need to be addressed. I often find myself, Chair, with these planning applications, criticising LCC's Highways Department. And in this case, it's not much of a change, really. If I was sat behind a desk, maybe in Preston, then I'd probably agree with the comments of the Highways officer and LCC comments. But we have to look at it from a real-world perspective and the problems that are being faced by residents there already. And this is going to make it a lot worse. So, Chair, I would suggest that we, on a do move, that we refuse on the basis upon which Bryfield and Ridley Area Committee refused.
Okay, thanks, Yasser. David, are you seconding Yasser, or do I need to look elsewhere?
You do need to look elsewhere, Chairman.
Okay. Do I have a seconder? Nadeem?
Yes, I'll second Councillor Iqbal. I mean, I know that area, like you do as well, Chairman, and some of the parking issues around there are horrendous, and we're just going to make the situation a lot worse for the residents. And I understand in terms of comments made by LCC what they're saying, but people who are on the ground, who know the area, as Councillor Yasser Iqbal mentioned, in terms of being familiar with the area and knowing the real difficulties in that area. And I think we possibly couldn't support this on highway safety issues. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks. Neil, I've got you indicating, but I'll bring a few councillors in and then I'll bring you back. David?
Well, Chairman, it's another one of these where I don't think we've got a leg to stand on. The use of the upper floors for commercial purposes generates parking, and if it goes to appeal, then that parking is parking. Doesn't matter whether it's commercial or residential. And I just think we're putting our planning staff in an impossible position trying to defend the impossible. So I think I fully acknowledge, there are issues with parking, but we need to accept that in planning terms, there is very little, in fact, nothing that we can do about it in terms of this application. So it should be approved.
Okay, thanks, David. Is there any other councillor who wants to speak? No. Neil, did you want to come back in?
Chairman, thank you, Chairman. This may seem like holding a gun to people's head. It's not meant to be, but I entirely agree with Councillor Whip. The point that I was going to make about this is that we have to consider the fallback position here. We've got a building that has 4 stories in it. All can be used commercially. We would have a residential accommodation which would have additional parking formalised within that, Chairman. I don't think we would have a case, and certainly unusually, I don't think we as officers could actually write the report. I think we will be asking for a member to do that or somebody else, because I just don't have an argument to put about why residential compared to commercial use provides any different situation in terms of parking, because I think, in fact, when you crunch the numbers, it's worse. So, Chairman, as I said, it's unusual, but I don't think we could actually write an appeal statement for you.
Okay, maybe a barrister councillor could then. Just to formalise the vote and make it easier then, Councillor Whip has moved approval. Is there somebody to second that? No. No.
I'll second it, Chairman.
All right, David, thank you. Okay, so it's a straight vote in terms of approval or refusal. So just to make it easier, if you're in favour of the application, it's for. If you're against, i.e. supporting the refusal, it's against. And if you want to abstain, you can abstain. So I'll call each councillor's name out. Councillor Nadeem Ahmed.
Against.
Councillor Mohammed Aslam.
Against.
Councillor David Clegg.
For.
Councillor Sarah Coburn-Price.
Abstain.
Councillor Tommy Cooney.
Abstain.
Councillor Mike Goldthorpe.
Abstain.
Councillor Mohammed Iqbal. Against. Councillor Yasser Iqbal.
Against.
Councillor Ashjad Mahmood.
Against.
Councillor Brian Newman.
Abstain.
Councillor Jonathan Nixon.
Abstain.
Councillor David Whip.
For.
Councillor Yvonne Tennant.
Against.
Okay, Jane, I'll make 2 in favour, 6 against and 5 abstentions.
That's right, Chairman.
That's fine. So there you go, Yasser, a job for you to do now. Okay, moving on to the next item is item 5, the new homes bonus. Dean, are you speaking to this, or Neil?
Yes, Chairman. So the government has opened a consultation on the new homes bonus. So for members' benefit, the new homes bonus is a pot of money that is top sliced off the revenue support grant and distributed on the basis of either new homes that have been built in an area or empty homes that have been brought back into use. The scheme's been in operation for probably 9 years now. So if you look at the table on page 2 of the report, you'll see there that over the period since 2011-12, the council has received just under £6 million towards its budget from the new homes bonus. You'll see that when the scheme was originally introduced, it was based on a 6-year programme. So any new homes bonus earned in year 1 was then paid for a further 5 years. That was subsequently changed in 2013-14 when the government reduced the number of years of legacy bonus, as it's called, down to 5 and then 4. And then also in 2017-18, the government introduced a threshold below which councils wouldn't receive any funding. So if we didn't build, as it says there, any more than 123 properties or bring into use more than 123 properties, then the amount of bonus in that year would be nil. As members are probably aware, our rate of build and our rate of bringing empty properties back into use, our rate of build is very low because we don't build that many houses. But equally, but we have been good at bringing empty properties back into use. And so most of the bonus that we've earned over the last 9-10 years is a consequence of bringing empty properties back into use. In terms of what some of the proposals are, those are set out in the appendix. Some of the key things are set out at paragraph 12 in the report. So the government is proposing to raise the baseline percentage below which councils wouldn't receive any bonus. And in the context of the existing percentage of 0.4% of our housing stock means that we struggle to get any bonus anyway. Raising it will mean that the new homes bonus is likely to be nothing in the future on the back of that. Equally, if they want to reward us on the basis of past housing growth, again, historically our past housing growth has been limited, so that's unlikely to benefit the council. There's talk of rewarding improvement for high housing growth, but because the council's aspiration is not to have high housing growth, then again that won't benefit us. And then further parts of the consultation talk about using the bonus as a way of promoting modern methods of construction, which in my view just serves to make the whole process of calculating the bonus much more difficult when in fact it's meant to be easy and transparent. So the views are expressed in the report. My view, if the government proceeds with the proposals as they are set out, then the new homes bonus is unlikely to be a continuing revenue stream for the council. As you see in the table, at its height we were getting £1 million a year, and that was supporting our budget. This year, or the year just coming ahead, we will get £168,000, and we are forecasting we'll get nothing thereafter. So, to my mind, the whole system is about rewarding areas of high housing growth. We are not that kind of area, and really the new homes bonus doesn't really work for us in its present state, never mind the way in which it's been consulted on. So that's the way that the consultation responses have been expressed, that if nothing else, leave the scheme as it is, but really get rid of it because it doesn't work for us. Put the money back in revenue support grant, and hopefully we might get more money as a consequence of that. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thanks, Dean. David?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'll put the table up that has been referred to by Ms. Langton there. I mean, this is no more than robbing the poor to pay the rich, and it's a shameless stunt that was pulled by the government to transfer resources away from areas like ours and to give them to Tory areas in the southeast. I mean, that's putting it bluntly. I mean, fortunately, Councillor Greaves in the House of Lords was able to get empty properties included as part of the new homes bonus. And if you work out all the figures, the empty properties occupied are around a net around about 1,000, and you know that's been a significant boost to us. Mr. Langton talked about the £6 million that we've got in from this scheme. I don't think he mentioned the well nigh 4 million that we've already lost as a consequence of the changes already introduced. But of course, all of this was funding that should have come to the council in the first place through the revenue support grant, and was top sliced, and a lot of it's been given to other authorities. So I wholeheartedly concur with Mr. Langton's assessment that it should be scrapped, that drain of resources from areas like Pendle to areas of relative prosperity should stop. and I move the recommendations in the report that we agree the response as set out, and all power to our elbow, in the hope that we might actually make some headway on this, because left, right and centre, people in Pendle, residents of Pendle, are being stuffed, and it's time that that should stop.
Okay, thanks, David. Any other speakers? No. Everybody happy to agree the recommendations? Yeah. Thank you. Item 6 is the recommended write-offs. So this is an annual report that comes to this committee meeting. I mean, clearly officers will have exhausted all the avenues available to them, but I think that the one word of comfort for taxpayers in Pendle is that if any of these debtors resurface, the debt is written back on and obviously pursued vigorously. So I'm happy to move the recommendations. Nadeem, I've got you next.
Yeah, just a quick question. In terms of the recommended write-offs for this year, how does this compare to, say, last year and the year before? I'm just thinking of the COVID effect. Is it significantly higher? I can't seem to remember the figures. Maybe Dean can answer.
Through you, Chairman, whilst I haven't got a comparison, the majority of this debt will be age debt rather than that relates to the current financial year. Clearly, we're still in the process of attempting to recover the debts from the current financial year. And in the event that we do have to write off, that will be a point in the future. But of course, we still need to go through the normal recovery process for that. Happy to provide Councillor Ahmed with information on previous years, if that helps.
Well, maybe I can help. I've just looked at last year's, Nadeem, and for example, this year's is significantly higher. So if I look at council tax, last year was just over 128,000. This year's is 439,000.
Chairman, we may have brought 2 reports last year.
All right, okay.
2 reports a year,
right.
So we've only brought 1 this year.
All right, that's fine. Sarah?
I do think I say this every year. I'm always alarmed by the figures. And this year, I'm alarmed by the 300 and nearly 40,000 of people who've absconded. It does make Pendle sound a very exciting place, that we've got 1,062 people that have absconded. And even lower down on paragraph 13 of page 3, we've got a person that we can't reach because they live on the Isle of Wight. It seems to me very, very high. I know that you say that you try to track them over social media in different ways, but that's, Pendle has something like 90,000 people living in it, doesn't it? And 1,000 of them have disappeared without trace. I'd love to know more on the background of this.
Yeah, I think if I can help and Dean can come in, this is not unique to this council, Sarah. I mean, the 1,062 number is not people that have disappeared. It's related to 1,062 debts that have disappeared, of people that are absconded. And there are parts of the borough where people move in, stay for a few months, move on and move out and disappear. Then it is very difficult for the council, especially if they're not claiming benefits, to try and track some of these people down. And I can tell you that from experience for working for another local authority that deals with exactly this type of thing. But don't worry, there isn't 1,000 people that have disappeared out of the 90,000. It's 1,000 accounts that have disappeared.
Yeah, Chairman, if we would be fortunate if it was the same 90,000 people who stood still and didn't move, because we could find them then. But unfortunately, there's clearly people moving in and out of the borough as a consequence of that. This could be several accounts for single people. And
you're not muted, but you did.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
It's Nelson Town Hall for you.
It was a gremlin at Trafalgar House.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, and so and equally, the suggestion is it's quite high. Of course, we're not comparing it to what other councils are doing as well, and I inevitably each council will be going through the same processes as we have to write off debts, so that we can focus on those debts that we can recover. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thanks for that, colleagues. The next item is item 7, the national planning reforms. Neil, are you still with us?
I am, Chairman. My internet keeps coming in and out, so apologies. Chairman, I think the report, hopefully explains this in enough detail. Just a few points I'd like to make. This is really about design changes and how design goes into the planning system. But I think there are 4 points to make. Chairman, there's a kind of continual change to the planning system that we have, and seemingly innocuous on occasions, but things such as here, our local plans have to look at quality of place and have evidence for them. So all of that slows the process of making plans and decision making down, Chairman. And that's one of the things that concerns me, Chairman. There's a section that's going to be proposed to be put in here at section 36D, which basically says that any government statement can be considered at an examination in public. Chairman, that to me is really dangerous, because we could have absolutely anything considered an examination in public. To me, Chairman, that we should object to that, to say it should be planning policies, etc., legitimate policies which are examined. Big issue for us, Chairman, with the planning, with these changes. So I think design codes are good, can be good, can be aids. Chairman, the resources to do them could be considerable, and I don't think we have the skill set as planners, because you need to be architects, designers, etc., in-house to do that. So there's a skill set, probably a national skill set shortage, as well as, Chairman, I think it will cost Pendle quite a lot of money to implement this. So we need reimbursing for that if it's going to happen. Chairman, the final point really is this is one element of wider planning changes, such as zonal planning, the 3 zones that the white paper put forward. Chairman, I think doesn't help anyone to have bits of consultations. If there's going to be a whole-scale change in the planning system, and that's fine, that's what government may wish to do. Chairman, I think we should be saying to government, we should have a blueprint for that, a holistic blueprint for us to look at and understand, to put the whole jigsaw together. So those are the main points, Chairman, I think we should be making in the comments back. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thanks, Neil. Councillor David Whip.
Can I propose, Chairman, that we do endorse Mr. Watson's comments? And I just wanted to highlight 2 things. First of all, in terms of the wider picture and the white paper that Neil has just referred to, that is proposing that planning consent would be automatically granted if the design codes were met and the land was zoned for development. And we all know the concern that there is from residents at the moment. We have heard earlier in the meeting about specific planning applications, and we've also touched on the housing land allocations, the local plan and the like. And effectively what the government are wanting to do is prevent all that from happening and leave us in a position where every now and again you agree a local plan, red lines are put around areas, and then the developers just get on with building houses so long as they meet the code. So that's the first area of concern. The second one is the paragraph 36D, which Mr. Watson referred to, and that is essentially saying that we are subject to ministerial diktat, not policies or processes that have been approved by Parliament, but ministerial statements to rule the planning policy background. And I'm just staggered at the erosion of the democratic process in both of the 2 issues that I've just mentioned. And I think we cannot protest strongly enough against the ability of local residents to actually influence the policy in the first place through the local plan. But secondly, the ability, their ability to then comment on specific applications which might come forward. I think it's a disaster. And lastly, I do agree with Mr. Watson that, you know, the whole of this needs to be looked at in the round. The planning system is bust, and it just seems that we're going to break it up a bit more so that developers get an even greater leg up. It's all wrong.
Okay, thank you. Sarah?
I agree with much of what Mr. Watson has to say, Neil, but following our Regulation 14 for the Colne Neighbourhood Plan, we had criticism about our rather vague design policies. And as a result, I applied for a grant from Locality, and we're now involved in zoning Colne from a design perspective for the town centre, for the suburbs and the rural areas. And it's a fascinating, detailed process. I think that planning would really benefit from having this kind of super local design codes, seeing it up close as I am. And I understand, trying to save you some money, obviously this will have been done for Colne by a professional team, including historian, archaeologists and so forth. So you'd only have the rest of the borough to do. But I think it really is so important to have a sense of place in architecture. And some, though not all, of our new developments in Colne do look a bit anywheresville. They meet the standards under the NPPF, but they don't feel either in layout or in form like Colne. And I would seek to protect that. So I would urge that what you've said here about paragraph 127 and 130, you consider again. And then my other small comment is, I know that the planning team in Pendle has worked terribly hard for many years, building an evidence base for local plan part 2. And yet now it seems that there's only 9 years left. Ultimately, I think that there should be a long-term vision, but with the caveat that obviously there is very, very regular reviews and updates. But I think people feel comforted if there's a long-term vision. And 9 years isn't very long, and perhaps it needs to be 30.
Okay, so I mean, I agree with the thing in terms of the long-term vision, but the point coming back to what Councillor David Whipper said is that if governments also shared that 30-year vision with local authorities and local people, maybe that'd be helpful. What doesn't help is that what, for example, Pendle may think is good for Pendle, government then issue diktats to say, well, no, one size fits all across the country, and that doesn't work for areas like us or for any other area for that matter. So in an ideal world, yeah, I agree with what you're saying, but the reality is, and if you look at certainly over the last 5 years of what's going on, does not help district councils like ours. Is there anybody else that wants to have a contribution? Are we agreeing the recommendations as moved by Councillor David Whip? Yeah, thank you very much. Next one is item 8, the Economic Strategy and COVID Recovery Plan. Well, this is in your name, Neil.
I do can I do that, Chairman? But sorry, Dean, do you want to do this or me?
Councillor Newman wants to speak for some reason.
Chair, could I be excused, please? I've just got to go.
Yeah, sure, Brian.
Thank you. Thanks very much, folks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start off and perhaps Neil can kick in. So, Chairman, members be aware that we've had a jobs and growth strategy for that we put in place in 2015, perhaps a bit earlier than that. And we thought now was the right time to review where we're at with that strategy, both in terms of what we've delivered, but equally looking ahead. not least because of the impact of COVID and what that means for a place like Pendle. One of the things we're really mindful of is that in response to COVID and other matters, the government, as you're probably aware, is now bringing forward a number of funding schemes, and we need to be ready to go with a sound economic and recovery strategy that will support those bids as we put them in. So what we're seeking here is to do that process by engaging with a company called Hatch, who worked with us on the Nelson Town Investment Plan, and using funding that we've been provided by both the LGA and the Vision Board, and working in partnership with the Vision Board, is to produce an economic strategy which sets out a plan for implementing some of the things that members are familiar with, in order to both create economic growth and increase the number of jobs we've got. The idea, as you can see set out in the report, is to base it around 4 particular themes: our place, business, people and connectivity, and inevitably there'll be things in there that members are familiar with, and hopefully we'll be able to identify new things. So it's in essence just to inform members about the process that we'd like to kick off and ensure that it's properly done. Thank you, Chairman. I don't know whether Neil wants to add anything.
Chairman, I think now is a really important, obviously with COVID, I think with the furlough scheme, I know it's been extended slightly, but I don't think we've seen the full impacts of COVID yet. We're still not out of, obviously, the pandemic. So I think, Chairman, now is the time really to relook at the former jobs and growth strategy, to try and get on board all the agencies, etc., in terms of reskilling, in terms of funding, etc., in a composite form, to try and help Pendle to go forward. And Chairman, we're also in a situation where there's a lot of new strategies which are being delivered, local industrial strategies, the Greater Lancashire Plan, etc. I think we need to update our economic position and to put all of that into one place so that we're very clear where Pendle is going forward and how we can help our businesses. And Chairman, I think it's also important for me within this, the Vision Board are very strongly involved in it, and they will support us getting on with this activity, which I think is much needed now. And now is the right time, I think, because we're starting to understand more locally and nationally where COVID will affect us. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that, Dean and Neil. I'll kick off and then bring other colleagues in. I mean, Neil makes a very valid point that, whilst nationally the government may say that, the COVID recovery plan will kick in a few weeks' time, the reality is that once the furlough scheme ends, because there's a significant amount of people in Pendle that are employed, in inverted commas, hanging on by a thread due to the furlough scheme, once that furlough scheme ends, will we then have the real impact of what's going on in Pendle? And I think a strategy and a recovery plan are the way forward, and commend the Vision Board for their partnership working with us, because in terms of the businesses, they're at the forefront. They work with the council, and I think it's right that we do a partnership approach to this, but endorse the recommendations that are set out. I've got councillors David Whipp, Sarah Coburn-Price and Ash Chad to speak. David?
I would second that we go forward with this, Chairman. The impact of COVID, I think, will be very telling for our area. I've spoken before about the job losses that we've already seen as a consequence of COVID, and I hope that those aren't the tip of the iceberg, but I do know that a lot of businesses aren't treading water. They are sinking, and we will have to see what comes out of this. But it's not only manufacturing, the aerospace sector, town centres are badly hit, and we must do all that we can to support those town centre traders who, if they've had any business at all during the past 12 months, it's been very minimal, and whether they can survive with the new arrangements that there will be, the preponderance now of online shopping, the erosion of town centres, all of that are impacting the issues that there are. There's a technical issue. I was talking to Stephen Young at the County Council the other day, and he was reporting that local industrial strategies are dead. He wasn't saying that. He was quoting people from government who were indicating that was the case. So I think the framework which everything else hangs on is in question as well. So we are really in uncertain times. I think the more the work that we can do to identify what we need to do locally, identify what we can do locally, and then get on and do it, the better. So I second the proposal, and I think as soon as we can put flesh on the bare bones that we've got at the moment, the better it will be.
Thank you. Sarah?
I just quickly shared this paper with some of the members of the Cone Bid group, and they were really excited about it and made a plea, could they be involved? Because although they only are Cone, they represent 330 businesses, and what they have to say might, of course, be able to be extrapolated to other parts of the borough. But they're very keen to be involved and may well help with that bid. So I could put Neil in touch with them.
Okay, point noted. Thank you.
Chairman, can I just add to that? There will be a series of consultation with stakeholder groups, so around each of the particular themes. So what we can do is include the Cone Bid within that process. And we're keen to get people's and groups' feedback on economic issues.
Okay, thanks. Ashjad?
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, I mean, I fully support the recommendation. I think it's good that we look at this moment in time. But in regards to Nelson, can there be focus on the retail sector, similar to what we've done over the last probably about 15 years in Cone, which is now thriving? I think we just need to try. I know there's a master plan for Nelson, which we discussed earlier on, but I think it's really important that the retail sector at this end of the borough is looked at and given like a serious policy development on that role.
Okay. Before I bring Dean in to respond to that, for some reason on my screen showing that I've only got 4 minutes left of the allotted time for this meeting. Has anybody else got that? No. All right then.
Don't worry about it. Just switch it off.
Sorry, go on, Dean. Did you want
Yeah, Chairman. I mean, you'll be aware, but the town investment plan for Nelson has a particular focus on the retail offer within it. It's much broader than that, but there is that at the heart of it. So I can assure Councillor Mahmood that it will be covered in the economic strategy, because the role of town centres clearly looking ahead will need to be something the council considers. But specifically on the town investment plan, that's a feature of that bid.
Okay, Nadeem.
Just a quick point, Chair. Just fully support going ahead with this strategy, but just on the point Sarah made in terms of getting businesses involved, and Dean's confirmed that. So I think that's really important, that the businesses who are in the deep end of it, who really understand the issues and the problems they're facing, that they're fully involved, which Dean has confirmed that they will be.
They'll be at the forefront.
Yes.
Yeah, Chairman, the vision board is there to do that. Chairman. Right. Chairman, just there's a moot technical point with this, is that as part of your resolution, please can you waive contract procedure rules in order for us to appoint Hatch, so Urban Solutions, to do this, please.
I'll move that. David Irish.
Agreed. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. The next item is the draft local flood risk management strategy for Lancashire. Councillor David Whip.
Thank you, Chairman. I did send Mr. Walker some comments earlier on, which were additions to the draft that is on the website, and I'm just struggling with a cat again. But if I can just quote from the comments I made, which are quite brief. First of all, in the section called Local Risks and Challenges, I'm proposing that we add that we address the backlog and regular maintenance of culverts and highway drainage systems to our comments. And then in the action section, and I'll put up a picture on this one, Chen, if I may. If I can get rid of this cat, I'd be delighted. But the picture is of an upland area that is used for water storage in heavy rainfall, and this first bit here is the subject of a plan application we considered a few meetings ago. And Chairman, the nub of the comment is that that we're suggesting that this cat's turned my email off now. You beggar. Right, here we go. Needs to highlight the necessity of retaining upstream wetland areas to hold back excess rainfall. And I cited this as an example of where that was the case. With those additions, Chairman, I move the comments in respect of the strategy, the county strategy, as set out.
Okay, I'm happy to second that. Ash, had you still got your hand up? Is that to talk about flooding or?
Yeah, just briefly. I think Barrowford, I mean, I know AB and Barlick have been mentioned in the report, but I think historically Barrowford, especially around Barrowford Centre and Nelson Corn College and further down Victoria Park, consistently gets flooded. And I think the last event a couple of years back, there was a major flood there. And I think that even though they've got these tanks, holding tanks underneath the playground at Nelson Corn College, it's still not doing it's probably helping, but it's not alleviating the full problem. So if that can be addressed as well, I think that will help.
Chairman, can I come in? Because
yeah, sure.
This strategy isn't looking at flooding from main rivers, and there's an important distinction between what this strategy is covering, which is mostly runoff and drainage issues, rather than the main rivers, coming out of the bed, which is a lot of the issue in Barrowford. The reference to Bonoldswick and to Earby is because Earby is in a different catchment, and it tends to get overlooked by the Lancashire strategy because they're just blindsided by it, and representatives for the area have to bounce up and down to ensure that it's given proper consideration.
Okay, that agreed. Thank you, colleagues. We then move on to item 21, item 11, which is 21 Manchester Road. So this came through as a report. I mean, in terms of the request, I mean, I endorse what the report is saying, because I think it's important, if we're going to look to redevelop the town centre at some point in the future, that as a council we try and retain as many of the freeholds as possible. So whilst I understand why the tenants or Euro Property Investments Limited may want to extend the lease or obviously buy it out, I'm moving the recommendations as set out. Nadeem, are you seconding me, or do I need to look for a seconder?
Just a comment before I decide what I'm going to do. But in terms of extension of the lease, I understand the freehold point, but in terms of extending the lease, we have extended the leases of a number of properties on Manchester Road to 125 years or something like that in the past, maybe a year or two ago. So I'm just thinking, if we've done it for them, what's the difference this time? Why are we saying no? I understand in terms of town centre, but we've granted leases to other business owners.
Okay, Dean, can you help?
Yeah, I think in the light of things like the Nelson Town investment plans, where there's a real possibility that the council will get funding for redevelopments of part of the town hall, town centre, by increasing the leases, then potentially that increases our liability in the event that we have to do something with those properties. So that's not to suggest we are going to do anything. It's just protecting the council's position. So I can't do anything about what's gone, but I can do something about what's coming. Thank you.
Yeah, can I come back in?
Yeah,
and I get it from what Dean said, so I'm happy with that, Chairman. But obviously, if we decide not to do anything with this particular building, they could always come back in the future, couldn't they? So
yeah.
Okay, cheers.
Ashad, is that a new hand or a legacy hand?
Legacy.
Legacy. Okay. Everybody okay with the recommendation? Yeah. Thank you. And then finally, item 12 is the tenders. Happy to note those. Sarah?
May I just ask, the first one, no problem with the tender, but is this on behalf of Nelson Town Council?
It is.
Aha, thank you.
Is that okay? Okay, colleagues, my understanding is this the last Policy and Resources Committee meeting for this municipal year? Yes. Can I thank every single one of you that have served on this committee over the last 12 months, and for those of you that are possibly not standing, thank you for your service to the council. Those of you looking to stand, hopefully we will look to have some of you back on the committee next year. But I'd like to thank you all for your indulgence this evening and wish you a safe virtual journey home. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.